Welcome back to this part. Now, this part would cover more serializers. Just like we saw in the last part, we're able to create the serializers for the project model. And we created the list serializer, the create serializer, the retrieve, the update, and the destroy. And we were able to do that using few lines of code. And that's because we're able to use the generics component of the REST framework, right? Like I also mentioned, there are other ways to do this, but you will probably write more code. So this is a quicker way and a faster way to do this. It's more efficient. Now, if you were able to do the serializers for the tax models, that's fine. On your own, that's fine. But if not, you can still follow along. So in this part, we'll be looking at, doing the same thing that we did for the project um, model. So we've imported the tax serializers. So I'll just come here, then I can get the like similar thing we did for this. I can just come here and say, it's using let me just come here, put here, say tax um, list and create tax. Yeah, list and create tax. Yeah, sure. Here we have the class tax list create view. You can see the name. It's actually good practice. This can be any name, but it's good practice, the view matches what you're doing. So it's easier to remember. Now, generics.list create API view, right? Our serializer class is the tax serializer which we've imported. Permission classes is authenticated, just like we said. So if you're not authenticated, you cannot even have access to this. Then the query set method, we have the project ID. We're getting the project ID. Now, don't forget that the tax, in the tax model, we have a project field there, right, that references the project model, right? We have a field called project that references the project model. Let me show you so you not forget. You can see a project, most of the foreign key project, right? So it references the project model. So the tax here is the child, then the project is the parent. So we're trying to get the project ID for that, for that tax. Now you can see here, only tax in project owned by logged in user. So return tax.object.filter. Project ID has to match the project ID of that tax, right? Then the project owner, that's the owner, has to be the logged in user. So self.request.user. So we request the logged in user and ensure that it is the project owner. Then the project ID also has to match. That's what we're doing here. Then perform create. This is the method to create new tax, right? So if you want to create a new tax, of course, the project ID that we've already fetched here will be given to this, then we'll save, right? Save project ID is equals to project ID. So project ID here, this is the tax project ID is equals to the project ID that we fetched. That's on line 39, right? So that is what this is doing. I hope you get this. Let me just take it once again. We are fetching the project ID, right, for this tax. So every tax has to have a project ID. Now, when we do this, only tax and project owned by logged in user. So tax.object.filter. Now, project ID is equals to project ID. This project ID is the tax project ID is equals to the fetched project ID that is on line 39. Then the project owner is also equals to what? The logged in user. That is the logged in user. So self.because.user. And if you want to create a new tax, definitely that tax will have a project ID. That's what we are doing here. We are fetching and we are storing in this variable. Then we are saving it. That's just what we are doing here, basically. So I haven't done this now. We'll do this. We'll do similar thing for the retrieve, update, and delete to delete a tax to retrieve a tax, just like we did for the previous one. So I'll just come here and say retrieve, update, and delete tags. So this is just similar to what we have before for the project, right? It's authenticated, the serializer class is the tag serializer, and for the query set, it will only return tags, that belongs to the logged in user. So you have to request, let's serve the request of the user. We're trying to just get the logged in user, right? And that is done. Now, after this, we go to our URLs to ensure that we have the right endpoint. That's the route, right? The right endpoint. So, having said that, we're going to come here. So we have the tax detail view and we have the tax list create view. Where's our URLs? Yeah, this is it here. We don't need this again, this root URL. So I'll just come here. I'll say I'm going to import the tax list create view, then the tax detail view. So here we have the endpoint. So the endpoint are the route basically for the tax. So you can see here project / int project ID. That's the project ID. Then the tax. Don't forget a tax has to belong to a project. It cannot exist on its own. So the project ID has to be here, then the tax. So we can list and we can create new one. That's what this endpoint does. Then here, if we want to get the tax details, so we can say for API / tax, then the int to get the tax details. So we can now delete, we can update, we can get it basically. So we can do that, right? Now, let's look at this on the browser. Our development server is still running. It's still running. Let's look at it in the browser real quick and see how we can do this. So let me just share this real quick. So now you can see this is our endpoint for the project. Now let's just see let's say we want to add one project. So you can do it using the HTML form, but better to just use the raw data because this is you can see application JSON, like I said. There are many formats you can see, but it's best to just JSON is the most popular format when it comes to API development. Let's say we want to create another task now. So another project. This is to the project endpoint. Um, we can say build fintech product, right? This is just right. So description, this project is for Trust Bank, Nigeria. All right, so this just you can see now. You can see there are 5 fields: ID, name, description, owner created at. But you can see we are just putting in 2 fields. That's because the created at definitely that one would be generated automatically. The owner, because I am signing as the admin, it will just request the user, then add it to the owner field. Then, of course, automatically the primary key will be added. In this case, it will not be 2. Project ID will be 2 because one already exists. So if I click on post, so I'm making a post request now, right? And that's because this endpoint can list just like you see, and it can create. So to create, I'll make a post endpoint. So if I click on this now, I'm having, you can see that it has done successfully. You can see ID2, name, build fintech project, product, description. This project is for Facebook Nigeria, owner admin, then this is the created. So you can see the time was automatically captured. So if I refresh this now, you will see that I should have 2 projects that have been created by this admin, which is super user. So this endpoint allows us to fetch, which is using the get API, right? And we can also post. So we can run the get request, and we can also make a post request, right? We can run a get request and a post request. Like I said, we want to do this better using the Postman or Insomnia, but I'll be using Postman. So you can also create more projects, right? Now let's look at the endpoints for the tax, right? Now to do that, I'll just come here. So there are 2. I'll put the ID 1, which is for tax. So API /project / one, that is project one, then / tax, right? Based on the URL and the endpoint for the URLs. If I should run this now, you can see I now have the tax list create endpoint. So you see it here, project detail, then tax list. So if I click on this, you see that the endpoint is showing here. That's the address 8000 / API. I'm reading from the bottom left / project / one. Then we now have this. So I can update this, I can delete this, I can, this what I just want is fetch, right? So fetch. So in this case now, tax list create. If I want to create a tax now for this particular project, I can do that, right? So this, I think I actually have a tax for this. Let me see. Demo tax. This tax involves building a tax manager app. Yeah, pending. Okay, I think we created the tax already. That's good. So let's use project two because we've not created that for project two, right? We've done that for project two. Let me see. Um, I'm going to change the project ID to two. So if I should run it for project two, let's see. You can see we have nothing. And that's because project two does not have any tax. We just created it. It's fresh. So there are no tax assigned. There are no tax attached to that project, right? There are no tax assigned to it. So we can do that. Let's just see. If we come here, now you see we have title, description, status, due date, project, and none. If you come to this HTML form, so in a way, this is giving you, let's say this HTML form, this is your front end in quotes, right? This is the React form they've created or the HTML form, whatever. So you can see whatever the user is filling the form on the front end, right? It is consuming this endpoint on the back end. And this is the concept of full stack development, right? Whereby the front end handles the form design, the aesthetic part, then for everything that is being done, an API is being consumed. So in this case, the API that will be consumed is the / API / project / ID, then the tax. So let's say I want to do this, and I can just come here and say title of the tax. Let's see, identify fintech. Okay, identify project requirement. This is a tax, right? So this type of the tax, and I can say this tax is meant to identify all the requirements for the fintech products for First Bank. This is just a description. Now, don't forget, I am still the signed in user, which is what's the word now? The super admin. I cannot change this to in progress. Then the due date, if I put a date here, I can say the due date is, let me change the month. Let me say 13th of February, right? So project, you can see project ID is project one. But in this case, I'm going to change it to fintech project because it's ID two, right? So it matches with the ID, that's project ID two. So I can run a post request now to this to create a new tax for project two. So if I run this now, let's see. I clicked on the post and voila. So you can see assigned to null. That's because I didn't assign to anybody, right? Because just as it is, you just have just one user, which is the super user. We don't have much users, just one user, right? So we have this now. We've created another tax. So we have two projects, and in each of those projects, they have one tax each, right? We can create another tax for this project. So let me see. I want to add another project, another tax. I can say um, tax two for project two, right? Tax two for project two. I can say so design DB schema, right? Send description. the schema of the fintech app, right? To the project manager. So this is just a description basically. Then status is progress. Um, this one, the time, the date can change. We can say this should be, let's say 17th. It's still project 2, so I'm going to leave it here, right? And I make a post request. So if I should do this now, you can see we have another tax. So all the tax we have in total for this project in total is 3. One tax is for project 1, then the remaining 2 tax are for project 2. And all of the project and the tax have been created by the super admin. So I hope you get how this works, right? I hope you get how this works. So we can see this using the raw data. And I'm just showing you this email form because this is how the front end people would, get it and they'll be feeling it and they're consuming this endpoint. So we'll stop here now. And when we come back, we'll now see how to do this using the postman. Then we'll also look at creating the registration. That's to create a new user and to log in. So we'll see those how to do that and the endpoint for those as well, right? So you can create more projects and you can create more tags, right? So just try and see if you can do that successfully. If you do that successfully, you've done very well. And we'll meet in the next part. Thank you very much.